Hello students, this is our lecture over Dunn and Halonen Chapter 9. We're going to be talking about some of the degrees in psychology, some of the undergraduate degrees, and some of the career options in the field of psychology for people with those degrees, as well as some of the skills and tying together some of the things that we've been discussing. So we recently discussed a lot of skills in psychology that you're gaining through your courses. And so what kind of skills do you have and what kind of skills do you hope to gain? So these two slides are just slides that I found as I was looking for like job skills and just general Google searching, but a lot of these things are things that we are trying to help build in students in this class and a lot of our other classes, especially in psychology courses. So things like teamwork. So even though group projects might be something that a lot of students don't enjoy, it's something really important for a lot of workplaces where a lot of the work that you do is in a group or in some sort of team. Networking, so networking with other people in the field, that's something I've definitely encouraged a lot in this class. So that's a really essential skill that you can start to build and work on in these kinds of psychology courses and taking extra and doing extra things like networking with other people who are doing research, who are working in the field that you want to get into. Conflict resolution, learning things about how human brains process things is going to help you with that. Creative thinking, we've talked specifically in a lot of psychology courses about creativity, how to build your creativity, how to use your creativity in different ways. So time management as well. So a lot of the study tips that we've gone over in a lot of detail in this class and some of the other classes in psychology really help focus on time management and some of those meta skills that can help you in school as well as in the job market. So other things like active listening, right now you're hopefully actively listening to these presentations that I'm recording and doing things like taking notes, applying it, thinking about it in different ways. Caring is something we like to try and build empathy in a lot of our students as they go through the programs. As well as things like responsibility. You see teamwork over here in two places. So a lot of these skills that we're trying to instill in you as a student as well as to prepare you for future job opportunities as well. So with that, these skills are really applicable not just in psychology, not just doing work of therapy or psychology research or things specifically within psychology, but they're applicable to a lot of industries and a lot of positions. So I'll give an example that might seem a little different. So I have a brother-in-law with a bachelor's degree in philosophy. And when you talk to people like just outside academia, oftentimes psychology might not be seen as a really useful degree outside in the world. Philosophy is often seen as even less useful than psychology. But the skills that my brother-in-law gained through that degree and through the learning of how to think critically about things, talk and debate with different people, really helped him have the skills to do the specific job that he ended up doing in the business world. So he's able to essentially, with his knowledge of philosophy and logic, be able to talk to people who are doing like the computer programming and the managers that want their programs to do certain things. So he's kind of the translator in between there and kind of positioned himself with the skills that he has to be able to work in this industry. That's completely different than doing philosophy in any kind of way. So he's done that in a couple different companies and industries with that, and right now is in big insurance company basically that works in between the people making their apps and programs and assessment softwares and things like that, and then the management teams that run and make decisions for what things the company is going to do and change. So he's kind of the in-between there, but it's the skills that he gained that were relevant to doing that. And similarly, you're gaining a lot of skills as a psychology student that can help you in a lot of different kinds of jobs that you might not even consider off the top of your head. So a big key here is to really market yourself and your skills well. So knowing what kind of skills that you have and how that could apply in many, many different situations. And so trying to show in different ways that your skills will fit the needs, that will even go beyond what they're needing, those kinds of things. So in your personal statement is a really good place to put some specific skills into there. In your interviews, talking about the skills that you have, how you've used those skills. So obviously a personal statement is going to be a little shorter. Interview, you'll have a little more time to expand on those things, but those are really good instances to talk about your skills. So consider the skills that you have now, the skills you are building, and also consider any skills that you would want to improve or increase within your education, and maybe take some steps to try and build those skills. Maybe talking to people who seem like they have those skills, or taking classes that might build those kinds of skills. That would be a really good use of the rest of education time. So let's define what these different degrees are. So first we're going to talk about the degrees according to my grandfather, because I find this really funny and not too inaccurate as well. So Bachelor of Science, he says that a BS stands for bullshit, and a Master of Science, an MS, is just more of the same. And then a PhD, or a Doctor of Philosophy, is piled higher and deeper. So I don't know that he's actually that far off. It's pretty entertaining, I think. I also found these other acronyms, or these other things PhD could stand for, which is really funny to me as a person, as I'm recording this right now, still working towards that PhD. So some of these are pretty great, and I think some of them really apply. So patiently hoping for degree. Don't know that I'm being very patient about it. Paid half of what I deserve. I think that can apply to a lot of our jobs that we experience, not just in psychology, just in the system we exist in right now. Please hire desperate. That one's pretty good. Pound head on desk. Usually I pound my hand on my desk instead of my head, but that still fits. PhD, pound hand on desk. So this one, I actually had to look up this one. Pipetting hand disease. So pipetting is actually, I should have grabbed an example. So essentially for a lot of things in biology and chemistry, you use what's called a pipette. It's kind of a pen looking structure. So, but it's basically you push on the end of it like kind of a soft squishy end, and then when you release it, sucks up whatever solution you have, whether it's a chemical, genetic material, any kind of medicine, any kind of anything really. So any kind of liquid solution, you go like this, you suck it up, and you put it into the different little, that clicking was probably very loud, sorry about that. Essentially you pipette this solution into beakers, vials, things for your research, for your testing. And so if you're doing a PhD in, say, biology or chemistry or maybe even medicine, you might be doing lots of pipetting. And so you might get pipetting hand disease. There's actually papers, as I looked into this, I didn't go to normal Google to search for this. I was still in Google Scholar when I searched it. And I actually found out that there really is a repetitive strain injuries for graduate students doing pipetting. They do enough pipetting that they can literally injure their hands permanently doing it, which is not really funny, but it's kind of an interesting feature here of getting a PhD. So parents have doubts. That one definitely applies to me. So with this, these are just some funny ways we can think of these acronyms. I really like my grandfather's ways, but let's talk about what they actually mean for real. So an AA, an Associate of Arts, is generally a 2-year degree. So you can go places where you might be able to do a little faster, you might take a little bit longer to do that, but it's pretty similar as the first 2 years of your bachelor's work. So a lot of general classes, things like that. There might be some specialization, but there's a lot less possible specialization with a 2-year degree than a 4-year degree. You basically just have 2 less years to focus on those areas. So you'll be taking a lot of general classes, general psychology, general math, other general science classes, probably some general English classes or writing classes. So that's what you'll see with an Associate of Arts. With this, some types of jobs that you can do with an Associates of Arts in psychology are being a lab tech, a paralegal, and some of these, it's not just psychology focused. You just need an associate's degree, so some of these apply there. So being a paralegal, having an associate's in psychology is going to be really beneficial because you have a lot more knowledge of human factors and how humans behave, how humans work, those kinds of things. But other people with an associate's could apply for a paralegal job as well. But it's just giving you a couple of the options that exist. So lab techs, paralegals, drafters, early childhood education teachers. So some places you might need a bachelor's or a master's depending on the state's specific requirements. You might need an associate's and then some additional specific training to be qualified in that area. So that can be different. Some places you'll be able to do early childhood education and teaching. So crisis and counseling centers. Usually in that kind of setting, you're going to be working under a case manager, so someone who probably has a bachelor's or even a master's who you're working under in that kind of situation, but you're doing a lot of the active crisis and counseling, the crisis counseling in those kinds of situations. So there's a couple different options of things that you might do with an associate's degree in psychology. So a Bachelor of Arts, so here we would see AA, Associates of Arts, Bachelors of Arts. We're also going to see BS, so Bachelors of Science, in a minute. So a Bachelor of Arts, though, first, is generally a 4-year degree. Again, some places you might be able to do that a little quicker or a little bit longer. And a Bachelor of Arts, the thing that defines the arts versus the sciences is that generally you're in more of a humanities department in the school. So the school has kind of set their psychology program underneath the humanities banner, versus in a BS, they've kind of put it under a STEM banner. So this is, you're a little more focused on humanities and other social sciences as well. So you will probably, someone with a Bachelor of Arts versus a Bachelor of Science, the Bachelor of Arts will probably have more English classes, more history classes, more philosophy classes as required for that degree. Maybe even political science. You might have to also take sociology, even though your major might be psychology. So oftentimes you're also required, even though it's a Bachelor's of Arts, to do a bio class, a chemistry class, or a physics class. You might have to do 2 of the 3, something like that. But generally it's a little more focused on the humanities, and these kind of classes up here are generally considered under the banner of humanities classes. So it's kind of a little more, if you've heard the term liberal arts, generally for liberal arts we're talking about these types of subjects, these type of classes, not necessarily STEM subjects, these kinds of subjects. So a Bachelor of Arts is a little more liberal arts focused is what that means. So a Bachelor of Science, on the other hand, you're going to be taking some of the same classes, obviously psychology classes. If you might have a school that offers both Bachelor of Science and Bachelors of Arts. Probably not, though. Most schools had just one that they offered. They're either offering a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. So again, a Bachelor of Science is, again, generally a 4-year degree, mainly on campuses that, like I said, have put psychology underneath the STEM banner. So they've included it with their other science classes. So often with these schools, you might have to take a science lab course. So that might include, also you might have to do a biology or a chemistry or a physics lab, as well as a psychology specific lab course. So for example, a research methods course, you might actually have to do a research project like collecting data, or the data is already provided and you analyze and report the data. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. But for a Bachelor of Science, you're probably getting a little more hands-on experience of doing the actual research in some way, both in other science classes as well as required in your psychology classes. So oftentimes in a BS degree, you are taking more math courses than you might be required in a Bachelor of Arts. So with that, the reason that's useful, especially here at Salt Lake Community College, to talk about Bachelor of Arts versus Bachelor of Science is because depending on your career goals, either of those might be a better path for you to build on your skills. So if you already feel like you have some skills to do the Bachelor of Science, maybe go that direction. It might be a little bit easier of a program for you. Or alternatively, you might not feel like you have those skills, but you want to get those skills, so you decide to do a Bachelor of Science degree. Similarly, if you feel like a Bachelor of Arts is already in your wheelhouse, go into that degree. Or if you want to build those skills, choose that as your degree path. So as you're looking up schools, yes, it's good to look at like the closest school, the cheapest school, things like that, but also look at their programs. Look and see if the two nearest cheapest schools or something like that, if one is offering a Bachelor of Arts, one is offering a Bachelor of Science, ask what skills do you want to build, what schools and programs will help you build those skills, and then also what skills do you need for the eventual job you're wanting to do. So making that decision between Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science can be really important. Honestly, if you're going into a master's program later on, in a few chapters we'll talk specifically about the differences between different master's programs as well as all graduate programs really in psychology. But if you want to get a head start on doing research, for example, maybe a Bachelor of Science might be a better option versus a Bachelor of Arts. But for any master's program, I've never actually seen or heard any faculty member, like I've never seen in a requirement that they say you must have a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. So essentially, if you've got a Bachelor in psychology applying to grad school, you'll be pretty much on even footing. But your skills might be different, right? If you've done a Bachelor of Science and you're trying to get into a research-focused program for, say, a PhD, maybe the Bachelor of Science would put you a little over the edge because you have some experience there, but it wouldn't take you out of the running to have that Bachelor of Arts. Similarly, if you want to do maybe counseling or something like that, honestly, either of them would be really appropriate. So think about what you're wanting to do career-wise, which might fit your skills well or help you build skills, or be able to focus on the skills that you want to gain, which I guess is building skills. All right, so with that, this chapter also it kind of shifts gears a couple times in this chapter. And it talks about having a digital portfolio. And you're probably familiar with this right now because you have probably done some e-portfolio work already. Essentially, your e-portfolio is one example of a digital portfolio. So overall, a digital portfolio is an online repository of work, papers, projects you've worked on, things like that, that capture you, that talks about your history, your achievements, your unique attributes and skills, your goals, your occupational objectives, so like what kind of work do you want to do. Actually, I might pause. After I finish talking about this, I'm going to pause the video and actually show you an example of my e-portfolio, how it exists right now. I meant to do a lot more work on it before actually showing it, but I just realized as recording this that I haven't updated it as much as I intended to. So with this does share some similarities with your personal statement. There may be pieces of your personal statement that you also put into your e-portfolio and vice versa. The digital portfolio is basically a personal statement plus other things in digital format. So what should you include in your digital portfolio? What would be useful? Well, your current occupational objective. What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of job do you want to get? This is one thing that's actually missing from mine that I'll show you in a second. So some achievements that demonstrate your goals. So what are things that you know how to do? What are skills that you have? What are some projects that show that you have that skill? If you did a really great group project, if you managed a team or something like that, or even were just a good member of a team that worked really well together, demonstrating that work and even having a little discussion of how this shows that you have the skill of teamwork is a really great idea. So it can show how your classroom experiences contributed to your aspirations. So you took a psychology class and it really helped you have a really good desire for doing research, or you took the abnormal psych class and it really helped you have a really good desire or really strong desire to work on reducing anxiety in a specific population. So that's why you have your career objective that you do. So strengths and other areas that you're working on currently. So you might even have a list of different strengths and maybe a link to something that shows that you have that strength. And even areas that you want to develop. This can show both what kind of job you want to get, as well as what kinds of skills, what kind of employable person you're wanting to become. So you can include references in these. It's not always a requirement, but make sure that these references that you would include in a digital portfolio would be academic or professional references. You might even use volunteer colleagues. Just a moment, my cat just knocked something down. Sorry about that. My cat knocked down the green screen behind me, so that was very loud and I thought it was going to break something. Anyway, so with this, you can include references. You don't have to include references. Some people might even recommend that you say, even in a resume, to say references available on request. This is different depending on the person. I tend to favor in a resume to include references, but in a digital portfolio, I myself would tend not to include references in the digital portfolio. But with this, any reference you pick, make sure it's a professional reference. Even if it's something like you volunteered with this person working with young people or something like that, that could be a good reference. Not family and people that are just friends who know your kind of work. So here's another idea, is there's this little image here, and you can type this out on your own. Look at different lists of kinds of workplace skills. This is just one example of them, but feel free to find any other example or page of workplace skills and write down an example of where you've demonstrated this kind of skill. So did you demonstrate it in your coursework, in your assignments, in your volunteer work, in your internships, or in your shadowing, things like this. So give yourself a list of the skills that you have and some examples of them, so you can include them in digital portfolios, you can include them in resumes, personal statements. Those kinds of things could be really, really useful. For a second there, I forgot if I had actually pushed the start recording button. So, what to include in your digital portfolio? This list is a really great place to start. There's also an interesting video about the ePortfolio specifically from Salt Lake Community College that I want to watch really quickly.
Hello? Of course I'd love to interview for the scholarship today. Is there anything you want me to bring?
Just a sample of what you've learned in college so far.
Sounds great. See you this afternoon. Yeah, come in full dance attire. I just gotta pick up one more thing. I just need to get some more people.
I think your 3 o'clock is here.
I was thinking on rainbow caterpillars.
Yeah, rainbow.
So this is maybe a little bit of a silly video, but it's actually a pretty useful visual representation of what you want in your digital portfolio. And it's really nice that at Salt Lake Community College you are building these e-portfolios. It might seem like an added on thing at the end of the semester. You might feel like it's busy work, but we've seen from research that doing this kind of thing, building an e-portfolio in our classes, does help you to connect classes together, to connect those learnings, to reflect on those things. And in this sense, your digital portfolio can be a really good example to share with people the kind of work that you can do. So I wanted to share this link as well. This is, and I've shared this in a couple different chapters, so you might have seen it many times, but this is a list of things that psychology majors have and can do. It's not an exhaustive list. There's things that we've even talked about today that are not on here, but feel free to click on this link and see if there are positions here that might be interesting to you. So this is a page that was originally written by the APA. They actually on their website keep lists like this, but this is a nice just one to scroll through. So go to websites like that and see what kind of entry-level positions you can get with, say, an associate's or a bachelor's. So there's a lot of different things that you might not have considered that you might be qualified to do, that you have the skills, that you have the training to be able to do. So before the end of this chapter, I did want to show my current version of a digital portfolio. It's really research focused. Right here, I just have a little bit about what I am currently doing. And the main thing here is this lets people take a look at my CV. Oh, I thought I had updated it more recently than that. I need to do that because I've actually updated my CV since then. I need to put it over here. But one of the really useful things here is that it contains, I think I now have all of the different articles that I've written in these, at least that I'm first author on. All of the articles I'm a first author on, and most of them that I'm a second author on, so that people can click and download them here, have a good example of the kind of work and research that I do. Since a lot of my work is so research focused, this is simply how mine looks. When I go to a conference, I essentially add a web page onto here with a link to, say, the slides that I went over at the conference or whatever kind of paper I was talking about, so that I usually have a QR code on my business card. Essentially, I have a QR code on it, so if they scan it, they can go to this website and download whatever I was talking about at that conference. It's really useful for networking. I found it to be really helpful. It has my email on there too, so it makes it easier for people to see the kind of work that I've done and connect with me that way. So I have the website on there as well as my QR code on there as well as my email. So a lot of ways for people to get some more information about the kind of work that I do. So hopefully this gives you some better ideas of the kinds of things you can do with a bachelor's and associate's in psychology. There are a lot of skills that you have as a student at this level already, and there's things that you are going to build even before the end of this class and the end of your associate's or bachelor's or whatever degree you're shooting for. So think critically about those skills so that you can put those into things like your digital portfolio, like your interviews, like your personal statements.